Hello, everyone. My name is Misty, your host of the Celestial Salon, and welcome to episode 2 of this podcast where I bring in bright minds from around the world to discuss cosmology through the lens of astrology, art, and culture. I'm here today with artist and poet Mar the Ghost to talk about the transformative power of poetry, especially in the form of spellcasting. Mar's upcoming book, Torments, Hauntings, and Other Activities for the Deceased, is a powerful anthology of poems about a variety of things, but after reading it, I found a central theme. It seems to be uh, this personal alchemy and self-transformation. And Mar also taught a workshop with my friend Cedar over at Mystical Thoughts Shop on how to write poetry as spell work. So that's what we're really going to be focusing in on today. But Mar, I'll first have you start with an introduction of yourself and your connection to poetry.
My name is Mar the Ghost. I am born and raised in the 417. I've been writing poetry since I was a kid, but specifically been in Springfield's poetry community since December 2022. And I am about to publish my anthology, and that's really fun and really exciting. I am a co-leader of the local open mic Poets Corner. And so we host that every second Friday of the month, and that's something that's really important to me as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I remember first encountering you. I used to go to the show me poetry at
Mhm.
what's that place called?
Nathan P. Murphy's.
Nathan P. Murphy's. Yeah, I used to
Mhm.
go there a few years ago, and that I think was the first time I was ever in your presence. And I noticed I that you were like you joined the competition a lot.
Yes.
And I love your poetry, but I was like, wow, they're always doing like the same poems. Now I know why most of
Yes.
it was poetry from the book that you're
Hmm.
releasing. So you
Yep.
got a good amount of practice with those, and we're going to hear one of them later today.
Yeah.
On to poetry for spell work. First, tell us about how your experience was doing that workshop with Mystical Thoughts.
Oh, it was great. Cedar and I had like sat down and kind of set our intention with the workshop. And it was really intimate. We only had about 8 other people there. And so it was really nice, really cozy. It was fantastic. I'd never done anything like that before. And having Cedar's insight on the spell work component of it and having me have the poetry aspect of it, it came together beautifully, and I really, really enjoyed that, and I hope to do it again.
Yeah. Have you ever used poetry for your own personal spell work before that?
No, I hadn't. I of course like have set intentions before,
Hmm.
but I never thought to put those two parts of my life together. Which was it was really interesting to see like, oh, that meshes perfectly.
Hmm.
Um, because it you both work with intention in poetry and spellcasting. You work with emotion in poetry and spellcasting. So to have both of those just combined so well, it was really powerful, and I really, really enjoyed it.
There's a bridge between the woo-woo stuff and
Hmm.
artwork, and just creative practices. I think creative practice is a spiritual practice. And this is even something I covered in my last Celestial Salon episode. We were talking about because that person, she's an artist and astrologer like I am, and we were talking about like, they're two seemingly unrelated things, but they
Hmm.
fit together
Yeah.
super well. So yeah, it's so beautiful when you can bridge two things together and find that unity in between and have them support each other. So poetry for spell work, and this is a lot of stuff that I've learned from Cedar as well. Cedar has taught me a lot in my time that I've known her about this stuff, about the more witchy side. I do come from a more like non-woo side of the astrology zone. But as I become a little bit more woo with it, Cedar has been teaching me a lot. So some things that she's taught me are, especially when it comes to the poetic element of spell work, one, rhyme, like the rhyming element of spells, a lot of like the stereotypes or the conceptions we have when it comes to a spoken spell is it rhymes, or maybe like it's in Latin or something, but usually there's like some sort of rhythmic intention or incantation. And so there's a rhythm to it. And there's also this rhyming element, which not all poems have to rhyme. I would even say not all spells have to rhyme. But rhymes can make your spells one easier to remember, so there are less screw ups, and
Hmm.
it's harder to forget. And writing a poem as a spell can help the practitioner hone in on their true intentions. Like you're really drafting something out beforehand. You're really thinking extra about, okay, what do I want and how do I ask for it? And then she's also taught me that speaking words out loud helps bring that intention into your physical
Hmm.
reality. It takes it from something that's like up here in like the more spirit realm to something that's like in our tangible reality. Have you tried like using your poetry in spell work?
Yeah. So in that workshop, we actually created the spell poems. And we sat down and just meditated for about 10 minutes to think about intention and emotion and what we were feeling and what we were wanting. And I don't have it anymore. I don't know where it is. It's since I've moved since then, and I think it got lost in the move. But it was the poem that I created was it was strong, and it felt powerful, and not in the sense of just like, oh, this would do great in competition or this will move a lot of people, but like power in like the metaphysical, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
We sat down with 8 other people. It was 10 of us total with Cedar and I, and it was intimate, and we sat for like 10 minutes with like meditative music playing, to think about intention and emotion and working with that. Um, and I wish that I had the poem that I wrote, but I've moved since then, and I think I lost it in the move.
Mhm.
Um, but we all wrote our own spell poems in that workshop, and some of them didn't get finished, because it was only about like it was 2 hours, and you can't rush the process. Um, but it it did rhyme, because I do think that Cedar is right with rhyming does make spells easier to remember, and especially if you're taking it in a longer form.
Mhm.
Um, repetitive sentences also helps. What we had done was to kind of make it easy. We had said that we were going to have like a intention sentence that we were going to add into each part of the poem. And we had 4 parts. And so kind of what we did was we took the first part to be the broad spectrum, the broad intention, what do you want? And then the next part was a little bit more honed in, and then the next part was a little bit more honed in, and by the final part, you had like your detail. Um, and that was great. And in each part we had that cue phrase or that intention sentence. And with me, I ended each part with that phrase. Um, and I remember it being powerful, and not powerful in a way of like, oh, this will do great in slam or this will do great in competition, but more powerful in like the metaphysical
Mhm.
and feeling that and feeling like, oh, this is something. And I wish that I still had it. I don't. And I wish currently that I had time to sit down and really focus on that intention, and write another one. It's been crazy. So,
Yeah.
um, so I want to do it again. I just haven't had the time to sit down and write that because it is important. It is
Mhm.
important to me. They're both spell casting and poetry are both equally important in my life, and for them to mesh so well and for me not to do it as often as I'd like, it it's hard, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of life that happens in between, but I think you'll find your time. I think you'll find your time. So for anyone who is interested in writing a poetic spell, what would you suggest for them? How would you suggest them going about doing that?
Yeah, so I would say you've got to sit down with yourself. You've got to be vulnerable. Like we always say at Poets Corner, that it's a vulnerable space to be in. And it is vulnerable to share it, especially. You don't have to share your spell work, of course. Um, but it comes from within and it comes from the true parts of yourself. So you really got to like sit down in a quiet space. You don't have to meditate, but you do got to think about your intention. Feel the emotion that you're wanting to go along with this. Emotion and intention go hand in hand in both poetry and spellcasting. So you have to sit with it. As hard as it is, you have to sit with it. And what we did was we did it in four parts. And that really helped with like getting it together and having like a really good base. Um, and we had like our cue intention, our cue phrase in each part. For beginners especially, following structure and then getting loosey-goosey with it later on is, you got to know the rules to break them, kind of.
Right.
And then just what's the intention?
Mhm.
What's the emotion? What's the intention? Are you angry? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you confident? Okay, you're confident. So what are we confident about? What are we wanting to put from the metaphysical into our realm? And just focusing on that. Letting it rhyme is also a really good trick to, again, remembering and also just getting the base for it.
Right.
I think it's really helpful. I have a hard time with rhyming, specifically just because I am a lot of like free form.
Mhm.
Um, I use my poetry as like a journaling at technique actually. I actually will like dissect my poems in therapy with my therapist, and that's like the way that I journal. Um, Sorry, I went on a tangent.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Um, yeah, so as far as like the spell, so we have like sitting with yourself, making sure it rhymes, and then it probably needs to be pretty short comparable to like a
Hmm.
multi-page poem that you might read in a
Yeah.
book. So kind of short, and then maybe a cue phrase to finish the poem.
Hmm.
What would you suggest for like that finishing phrase?
Yeah, so it could be the intention that you start with. So the way we wrote it was, or the way I wrote mine was that we did a couple lines and then had that cue phrase. So for part one, it was a couple lines and then cue phrase. And then it was part two was a couple different lines, but that same phrase. Part three, different lines, same phrase. And then you do part four, kind of like how you write a conclusion on a paper, kind of taking
Mhm.
all aspects of all parts of the poem, but finish with that cue phrase, that intention phrase, because that's what you're wanting, right?
Mhm.
So that's what needs to be the super repetitive aspect of it. And it doesn't have to be, again, it's easier to be shorter for spell work, especially.
Mhm.
Um, I think I had three lines in each part, and it was like 12 lines total. Uh, so having that cue phrase being the finishing phrase is what's going to solidify that spell.
I like that. Yeah, not only just solidifying it, but just I remember in the spells I've done before, like, and I'll usually write like do something that's like already written by someone, like
Hmm.
that I'll find in a book, but there's usually some sort of end phrase like so mote it be or something like
Hmm.
that that just says like this is it, this is how I want it, and that like sends it off.
Hmm.
I would like to return to what you were saying about therapy, because this is a way that we can use poetry, especially for those who are like less woo, which if you're not a woo person and you've made it this far in, thank you for listening. And now we can jump into like, okay, how can we use poetry for personal alchemy? If I'm not like a spell person, if I don't want to do a ritual and like have candles and all of that. And I like
Yeah.
what you were saying about like taking things to your therapist because when I was going to show me poetry, I was doing that at a time where I was writing a lot of poetry because I had a lot of like emotions to process.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, it can be probably pretty healing to just like stand on a stage and do some spoken word and put it all out there, like lay it all out there for everyone to see. And a few things that I noticed during that time in my life was one, the process of writing a poem did help me unravel my emotional thoughts or feelings. I think one thing that I've been considering now, especially after like being connected with Cedar and what she's taught me about spell work and just the verbal element of it. One thing I am curious about for you, I'm going to jump around a bit, but going to spell work. Um, One thing I noticed when I was doing those spoken word performances is do you think there are any implications, like if someone is like writing a poem that's not for spell work, it's just for their emotional release, and they are standing up on a stage and doing spoken word, and let's say it's like not a super great like poem as in like oh it's nice and poetic, but like really putting the trauma out there. And I
Hmm.
noticed when I was writing poetry I would really focus on the negative things in my life, and poetry was a way for me to essentially complain. It
Hmm.
was a way for me to complain, which is fine. But after learning about spell work, I'm wondering what your opinion is of taking those maybe more negative poems that are maybe more of a complaint, focusing in on the woe is me. Do you think that even if a poem is not intended to be a spell, that speaking some of those things out loud could potentially bring more of that negativity into your reality? I'm just curious about your
I,
opinion on that.
yeah, I'm kind of the mind where if I am like, and I've been in therapy, so I've worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you bring about what you say, like what you feel, and like it's if I wish something negative upon somebody, I usually find myself facing a negative repercussion
Yeah.
from that ill will, you know? Um, and so I think it's just about like protecting yourself,
Hmm.
putting up wards if you know how to do that. Um, I I like poetry because you can get out your emotions. I
Yeah.
like spell work because you can set forth yourself into the metaphysical.
Hmm.
When you combine it, that's where it gets tricky. Because it's if you're wishing ill will upon somebody and that creates a spell within itself, then what's going to come back to you, you know?
Right. And
Uh,
especially if the poem, I think, is about yourself, like not necessarily even about someone in general, but
mhm,
if you're like, because I remember I would just write these poems over like, and the gist of it would be like, I'm a miserable person, I suck, I
mm,
hate this thing. And so I like what you're saying. I know you're taking it as like, oh, another person, but I think like it can reflect back to
mhm,
you as well. But I
mhm.
think you're definitely on a good path with this point because it's like it does help you process those
Yep.
things. And especially if you're saying it out loud, like it does trigger like your attention.
Mhm.
The therapeutic nature of poetry, I think, is very helpful.
Mhm.
And I think it does help us process those emotions, processing the past, especially to clear a path for the future.
Mhm.
And in your experience in your life, would you say that poetry has helped you transform yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always written poetry. Like ever since I was a kid, I've always had an interest in it. And I started performing in the slam or competing in the slam in December 2022, and then became more involved with the open mic later. But it from the time when I was a kid, from December 2022, I had realized that I was transgender. I'm non-binary. Um, and writing poetry and working with my therapist in therapy, to help like understand like, okay, I wrote this. I have no idea what I'm feeling, and getting that outside, that trusted second eye, it was really helpful. And it's made me much more comfortable in my queer identity.
Mhm.
Um, and finding out like who I am exactly, like what label do I like, what label do I not like. Um, and so I used to be so focused on like, I'm non-binary, I'm pansexual, this is me. And now, after writing and having that introspection, I'm just like, yeah, I'm queer and I'm trans. Um, and that's what I'm comfortable with. And it's been so helpful. And one of my poems that I read at Trans Day of Visibility or Trans Day of Remembrance is about the my younger self, about the little girl that I grew up to be, and loving her enough as a trans adult to let her go. So, this is actually the poem that I mentioned that I read at Tidor and Tidov. It's called Little Me. How could it be fair to ask me to write this? A eulogy for someone I cannot name, as in naming you would give you away to the birds. Let you chirp with the crickets as the sun sets on your final day. How could it be fair to ask me to talk about you as if you are not standing right here next to me? I cannot speak your birth name, and I refuse to speak your real one, because you are still here. You are still here and alive in the way the breeze sings. You are here in the way I hear the laughter echoing in the park, a dog's bark, a cat's purr. You are here in the way when I hug someone I try not to let go first. You are here when I look in the mirror. The little girl that fought so hard to be free. The little girl restrained by shackles made in pink iron as if they knew it would stunt your magic. I let you go, little me. I know I must do so. Because as much as I love you, you are no longer amongst the living. No, you are not dead, just someplace else. You are free. You are with the birds and the crickets. You are in the breeze. You are the laughter I hear in the parks, a dog's bark, a cat's purr, the longest hug. Be free, little me, and go where they cannot chain you again. Carry my love with you always.
Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mar, for joining me today. Everyone, this is Mar the Ghost again. And thank you for watching. Please click all of the buttons wherever they are on whichever platform you're watching this on. Mar, can you please share the details on how people can follow you, where they can
Mhm.
find the book?
Yeah. So I'm Mar the Ghost on everything except Facebook. My Facebook's personal, so I'm not going to give that out.
Mhm.
But Mar the Ghost, Mar underscore the underscore ghost on Instagram. Mar the Ghost, no underscores everywhere else. Torments, hauntings, and other activities for the deceased can be found when published on book at Bookmarks, which is our local bookstore downtown. It can be found at Poets Corner Open Mic every second Friday of the month. It can be found on Amazon. If you catch me out in the wild, then it'll be with me. I might even sign it for you. So, yeah.
I'm gonna get one signed. I'm gonna get one signed. Hell yeah. And for everyone who's watching, that's Bookmarks and Poets Corner in Springfield, Missouri. Just in case there's any confusion, if you're not local to Springfield or Missouri, Amazon seems to be where you can get it if you're not watching locally. But yeah, and if anyone really likes the book cover, you can find the more commercial side of my business at mistyvisioncreative.com. And again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.